So there you have a nice arrangement of My Jesus, I Love Thee. This is in the key of D, standard tuning. Let me give you a low E to tune up to where I'm at. Shouldn't be too far out there. Okay, so the introduction starts out with just a 5th string open lead in. Nothing too hard about that. And then the next couple measures, we're going from a D to a G, but we're playing it up here. The D is played with the index finger, 3rd string, 7th fret, and the middle finger, 2nd string, 7th fret. And just watch the tab. We got a little hammer on going from the 7th to the 8th fret with the ring finger, and it sounds like this. Just walk up and down. And then you hammer on from the 7th fret to the 8th fret on that 2nd string. Then you hit that open E string on top. Hold it all down, keep it all held down. And when you hammer on, leave that ring finger down, leave the middle finger down as well. Second measure, well, let's go to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd measure in, we go from that D to a G, but we do it like this. Put that ring finger back on that 8th fret, and then pick your middle finger up and put it on the 7th fret of the 1st string, and that gives you that D shape, a D chord. At the 7th fret is a G. That may not be the official name for that, but I call it a G. Here's a G. And it's real helpful to find some of these melody lines that you'll need up here at the top. So let's do the 2nd and 3rd measure. 3rd measure. 4th measure is the exact same as the 2nd measure. And then 5th measure as you finish off with the A and the D string open. And what's real nice about that is while these 2 open strings are ringing out, it gives you a chance to come down from this down to this D chord is where the song starts, as a D chord. But you do that while that is ringing out, gives you plenty of time. The sound does not stop when you play these open strings between these chords. So let me play the whole intro again real quick. First 3 notes of that 5th measure is a lead into the song, and it is essentially a D chord with the middle finger lifted off, making that a D2. Okay? First measure starts the melody of the song, and it's a D, starting off with a D. Okay? Now, it's good to leave this ring finger planted on that D, that 3rd fret, 2nd string, because it stays there as we go between the D and the G. Start the beginning of that measure. Then we come up with our index finger, place it the 2nd fret of the 5th string. Essentially it's a G, we're just not playing that bass note. And we also have brought this pinky fourth finger up to the third fret of the first string. Second half of that measure sounds like this. So let's play that measure all together now. With that lead in, it sounds like this. Second measure. That second measure is just a D chord, and you lift off your middle finger halfway through and you put it back at the end of the measure. Pick it up, put it back. Third measure in is a A7th chord. An A7th is like an A, only you pick up the middle finger, makes that an A7th, and that's what we're doing there. The way I play it is index finger, second fret, fourth string, and middle finger, second fret of the second string. And it goes like this, that third measure. Okay, let me play it slow. Fourth measure, back to the D, 2. And one thing I want to point out, I didn't put it in this tab, but I roll a lot of these chords. Instead of just pinching a chord, I will actually kind of roll into it from the thumb towards the pinky direction. I've kind of explained that in another lesson, but what it is, it's just like an arpeggio sped up. It's just a nice way of spreading out the sound of that chord. And I do it a lot throughout the arrangement. I do it when I play almost anything. I kind of do it without thinking. At first it was a little awkward at first, but just with a little practice you get it, and then all of a sudden you're just playing it without even thinking. So it's a roll, and you'll hear that as I play through this arrangement. So let's go back to the first measure and get back on track here. A7th on the third measure. Now we're back to this first measure. It's essentially the same, well, there's some variations in here. Here's one of the variations we're talking about. We're going to, instead of going like this, we're going to do a little hammer-on. We're going to lift up that middle finger, play the open E string, and then hammer on to that second measure of the first fret. So there's a little hammer on with the D. And instead of just playing the second fret down there for the G, we're going to play the whole G chord. There's a variation. So first measure with the hammer on and the full G chord. Second measure. We did that before. You just lift off the finger, middle finger for part of it, and put it back toward the end. Lift, back. Now here's another variation. Instead of playing that A7th, we're going to play an A add 9, and it sounds like this. Just another way to change the sound of it. Plus this A add 9, it's a beautiful chord, And I will always try to put that in there somewhere. When someone's playing an A, I'll throw in an A add 9. It's similar, but you got these beautiful open strings at the top. It's called an open chord. And the way that third measure is played, the A add 9, is the ring finger is planted on the 4th string, 7th fret. The middle finger is planted on the 3rd string, 6th fret, top 2 strings open. And you play that top E and the A together. Then you just kind of walk up it a little bit. Then you pinch that 6 and 0 together, hit the 7. Okay, so it goes like this. Back to 8, and there you go. While that top E is ringing out, you go back to the D. This is on your 4th measure. Now that hammer-on from the 2nd fret to the 3rd fret is leading into the next part of the song. But I want to back it up to the 3rd measure real quick. I want to mention something here. And that's that open E string. When I arrange for some fingerstyle guitar arrangements, as often as I can, I will try to have an open string ringing out in between chord changes. An open string or a harmonic or something to have a sound continually ringing out in between chord changes. And I did it here on this 3rd measure. While that open E is ringing out, I got plenty of time to come back down to this D. Then you do a little hammer on. Now we come up, this first measure is a D type chord. And it's a really nice sound. I use it a lot in arranging. And what I'm doing, index finger, 5th fret, 1st string, pinky or 4th finger, there it is, 7th fret, 2nd string, and then ring finger, 3rd string, 7th fret. And then you got this open D. That's a D. Where that comes from is my least favorite bar chord, and it's an A-shaped bar chord. Listen to the top notes compared to this. It's the same thing. So instead of this awkward A shape, I'll do it if I have to, but it's never very clear when I play it. I just take this shape that you see on your 1st measure, and it goes like this. You just play those 3 notes, the 5, 7, 0, walk up. That's the first part of that measure. And then we come to that D shape again at the 7th fret. Okay. Back to that D shape. Let me play that first measure again real quick. D shape. Back there. Now take that same shape, move it down to the 3rd fret, and hit this open 5th string with it. Then play regular D, and then we go to that A7th. Now what those chords are, I'm going to talk about just a little bit here, because that is played a lot throughout this arrangement. what it is, it's the D, a D-shaped G chord. Then we come to this E shape that we learned. Now this next chord is a E minor, which is nothing more than, if you can play a D minor down here, move it up to the 3rd fret, is an E minor. So you got the G, which is a D shape, and you got a D, then you have this E minor, which is actually a D minor shape, then you have a regular shape D, then you have the A7th. Real quick, talk about that E minor here. A lot of times in arrangement, I don't play all of those notes of that chord. And so instead of coming down from this deep shape, having to change fingerings, I just keep that same shape. It makes a nice little sound, but a lot of times I'm not playing it. I'm just playing those top 2 notes of that. So for a real quick chord change, now there is one time when I deliberately, we'll talk about that, but most of the time it's an E minor. I just simplify it, keep the same chord shape. If you want to switch to that fingering, that's fine. So let's go back to that first measure again. And at the end of that second measure, you see a 2 with that big long backslash. That's a slide. You go from the 2nd fret, 3rd string, slide it all the way up to the 7th fret. And I recommend doing that with your ring finger, because that's exactly what finger needs to be on that string up here. So it just really sets up that next chord. Okay. Now halfway into that 3rd measure, we're talking about an E minor chord. The song calls for an E minor there. Now, I try to simplify things as much as I can. With an E minor, the only two things you're fretting are the 2nd fret of your 5th and 4th string. The rest are all open chords. You can almost play an E minor with your hand on your hip here. So if I don't need it, I'm not going to fret it. So what I do, the melody line goes from the 3rd fret to the open, and it's an E minor, so I just play the bottom E, that 3rd fret, 1st string, and the open 2nd string. So what it sounds like is this. Okay? If you want to fret those, go ahead, but it's not really in this arrangement. Now that 4th measure in, as we're back to this A7th chord, only we're taking the ring finger and putting it on the 3rd fret, 2nd string, which makes it a suspended. Yeah, it's kind of suspended out there, ready to resolve. So that 4th measure with your ring finger planted on the 3rd fret, it sounds like this. Open string, and then the A7th. Then last 2 notes as you put the ring finger back. Okay, so when you play this A7th, go ahead and leave that middle finger down as if you're playing that chord, but plant the 3rd fret right above it while leaving that one down, because you're going to be pulling this off. Back to that 4th measure in. arch with a dot over top that A7th chord. That means hold. Hold a little longer than the designated note value there. Plant the ring finger back. First measure in is we're doing that little hammer on and then playing the full G chord halfway in. Full G with a walk up with the thumb. Second measure, we've done this before. And then here's this chord progression again. Starts off with the D. We're doing something a little different with it this time. Look at the bass notes. So it's like this. Those last two open strings on that third measure is really where we would be putting in this A7th. And when you play an A7, there are two open strings in that chord. And there's your A7th. So what I did in the arrangement is I'm just playing those two open strings, first and third string. You don't need to fret it. It goes like this. Take your hand away. Or while those two notes are ringing out, what I like to do is while they're ringing, we go ahead and come up here to our 7th fret and do this again. Like the intro. Okay, so let's back up here. Yeah. While it's ringing, come up here. Lead in while those two open strings are ringing. Come down here, you got plenty of time. That's the third measure. Now that fourth measure starts off with verse 2. And you'll notice on there I say play bolder, because one of the things you can do to make variations in a song is just maybe sometimes play it a little louder than the first time you played through. You don't want to play the verse 1, verse 2 exactly the same. It gets a little boring, and we're going to do a lot of variations on verse 2 in addition to playing it maybe a little bolder. So, and it starts right off there at the beginning. Fourth measure, it starts off about the same. Well, let's back up to the third measure. Here's a variation. Normally we'd be going to the G, but we're going to throw in an E minor there. And this time we are fretting those strings down there at the 2nd fret. So E minor instead of. When you play it through the second time, it's just a nice little ear-catching difference. Sometimes you can substitute an E minor for a G, and it works out, and it works out perfectly in this arrangement right here. We'll do that fourth measure again. E. Got the top G planted with the fourth finger, and we're going to walk up these strings with the thumb. First measure, we've done this before. Pick it up and put it back. Now the second measure is another variation. Typically we have gone to the A seventh chord. This time we're throwing in a C chord there. Now that's a very interesting substitution there, but it works so nice. Listen to this. So that second measure is actually a C chord, and I got to be honest, I did not think of that myself. I was listening to a guitar player, his name is Steve Martin, not the comedian banjo player. He's a guitar player, and he's got a CD out called, I believe it's How Great Thou Art, and he was playing My Jesus, I Love Thee in the song, and I was listening to it, and I heard him. It was a much more advanced arrangement. He had key changes, but he did something really interesting while he was doing that song, and I went back and listened to it. What was that? So I grabbed my guitar, and I noodled around, and I found out that it was I believe it was a C. And so I got my guitar and put that C in there, and it sounded a lot like what he was doing. I'm not going to say exactly what he was doing, but it worked. So what we're doing on this second measure is we're playing a C chord, and we're hitting the top two strings with that bass third fret, fifth string. Walk up. See that? That's the first part of that measure. And then we hammer on from the first fret to the third fret, second string. Missed it. Then we play the top E. Now by itself it doesn't sound like anything, so let's back it up to that first measure. So that's the timing of that second measure. Third measure. Okay, third measure, a little clearer. Fourth measure. Now we're back to the G instead of an E minor. Okay, so we've substituted a G for an E minor. We've substituted an A seventh for a C. And now we're back to a G instead of the E minor on that fourth measure. First measure, we've done this plenty of times by now. Lift. And then we're back to the A add 9 instead of the A seventh. Third measure. We've done that before. Now the fourth measure, we're doing this progression again. Only this time we're going to be strumming each one of those chords, all 5 strings, from the 5th string down to the 1st on each one. So let's go back to the third measure here. Fourth measure, we take this D shape that we've learned. Then you take the G, which is a D shape. Oops, Do that a little better. Strum that D shape. Here's where you can change to an actual E minor shape, to a D, to an A seventh. Now if you want to, when you play that D, like I said before, take that same shape, move it down. It's easier and it gives a little interesting sound to it. So instead of this, listen to this. Isn't that nice? Plus it's easier. Now just a quick word about strums. The way I do a strum is, as I'm playing down here, I strum with the back of my nail. You know why? Because it's right there. If I strum with my thumb, which you can if you want to, you have to regroup with your hand. Up here, your hand's already there. My fingers are already poised to go. So practice that if you want to do that. Practice strumming with the back of your thumb. I'm sorry, back of your finger. Did I say thumb before? Back of your finger. Okay, well, I'm going to back up to the fourth measure that we did before. And then the first measure, we're going to do the E minor shape. Or you can just keep that same shape down. In fact, I do that all the time now that I'm thinking about it, when I do these strums, because it's just an interesting sound. Now here's a variation right there on that first measure. See that 12 with a parentheses around it? That is a harmonic at the 5th string, 12th fret. Last time we did this. We did a slide up. This time for a variation, I do a harmonic. Whoops. Because that harmonic rings out, gives you time to go to the chord you want while that's still ringing. That's part of the second measure. Okay? Then you do that E minor, which is nothing but okay. Suspended A seventh with the ring finger planted. We've done that before. Release the middle finger. Put it back. Then on that fourth measure, we do the G, only without the bass, just the 2nd fret of the 5th string. First measure, we've done this. That's the timing of that. And then we do this same chord progression down, but just alternating the bass notes in there. See the bass notes? Third measure is we're going back to that intro. Fourth measure. First measure, second measure, 2 open strings. You know what that means? That's giving us plenty of time while sound is still ringing out to come up to this last couple measures. Now it's a bar. You'll notice at the top there you have the Roman numeral 7, so we're up here at the 7th fret. And there's that half in front of it. That means we're barring half of the strings. So half of 6 is 3. We're barring the last 3 strings. But we're taking our pinky up here to the 10th fret, which is a nice D. In addition to that, we're taking our middle finger, placing it on the 8th fret, the 2nd string, which makes it a D suspended. And at the end, we lift up the middle finger. Okay, so let's go back to that first measure. While it's ringing, bar, plant, plant. And it's like this. You play the top 3 strings. That third measure is playing those top 3 strings without changing anything. And then your fourth measure in is you're playing a 5-string strum after you lift off that which makes it a D. So let's play those last 4 measures and watch how, while those are ringing out, it gives you plenty of time to set up this D suspended chord, okay? Here we go. Here we go.